Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this evening? Welcome to the vlog hour with Peter Monn. It is Sunday evening, 12:45 a.m. going into Monday morning, and I'm driving around as I do in the vlog. Welcome to the vlog. And yeah, that's it. I'm in a silly mood. I don't know how long I'm gonna vlog tonight. I keep on saying that like every night, and then well, last night I said that and it wasn't. It was about 45 minutes. But I really, really, truly do want to finish my audiobook tonight. I keep on putting it off because like I listen to a little bit of it and then I get so bored that I have to like stop, but I really want to finish it tonight, and I know that I have like exactly 48 minutes because I looked. And I mean, the book is not horrible. It's really not. I'll probably end up giving it 3 stars, but the writing is just really not that great. And like I said, and I'm interested in the story in that I have to find out what happens. But other than that, like, I cannot, like, DNF a book, and DNF means do not finish. Like, I just really cannot DNF a book. I have such a hard time doing that, especially if I have, like, invested any amount of time in the book whatsoever. I'm just like, oh, I can't just, like, stop reading it now, you know? So, I'm gonna finish that tonight. And then I don't know what I'm gonna read after that. I'll let you know on my BookTube channel. I'll probably talk about it over here as well. And then, what else? Didn't really do a whole lot today. I had planned to kind of like get up earlier and film some videos because we were going over to my cousin Caroline's house for dinner this evening. And I was like, well, I'll film, you know, like a drama video and a Peterisms video and then have my vlog to go up and stuff. But I decided to sleep in instead, and then just kind of didn't really do a whole lot around the house until we left. I took a shower and like got ready, and then we left and we went over to Caroline's, and yeah, we had a good time. So I just didn't want to be rushing around, and I was like, just take a break today from videos, and then I will be back tomorrow. 6 videos maybe, we'll see. Tomorrow, it's going to be hard, too, because I have a recovery commitment in the afternoon, and then I have my literature meeting that I do online with my friends in the evening, with my girlfriends in the evening. So, that is... I'll probably be done with this thing in the afternoon about 3:30, and then that's at 8. So, whatever I can get done in between or before. But anyway, yeah, we went over to Caroline's tonight. We had a great time. We got over there. Caroline is so cute. She was like, do you want a coffee or a Diet Coke? And at first I was like, oh, I'll have a Diet Coke. And I hadn't had any coffee yet for the day. And so I started drinking the Diet Coke. And then she was like, I have cold pressed coffee if you want it. And David started laughing. That's her son. So it was Caroline and I, or it was Alex and I, Caroline and Mike, her husband, David, their son, and then his girlfriend that we hadn't met yet. So it was really nice to meet her. And it was just so low-key and relaxing. It was just like a nice family dinner night. It was so nice. And so she was like, I have cold brew. And David started laughing. He's like, Mom, it's not really cold brew. And she's like, well, it's iced coffee. And I was like, well, what is it? And she pulls out of the refrigerator her like French press, and she was like, I make coffee in like a French press every night, and then I put it in the refrigerator and I let it like steep and sit for the next day. And she was like, then when I wake up in the morning, she was like, I have like really strong like iced coffee ready. I was like, oh my God, I love that idea. Like maybe I'll do that on my Peter Does Stuff channel. So I think it's a really cute idea, you know? So she was like, yeah, you should try it. So I may do that one of these nights this week. And then, what was I gonna say? So I had a Diet Coke and I had coffee. like I said the other day, I kind of miss like making my own coffee at home. I need to start doing that more often. Like, don't get me wrong, obviously I love Starbucks, and Dunkin' Donuts too. But I rarely ever just go to Dunkin' Donuts just to go to Dunkin' Donuts. I did when they had that what do you call it? Drink. Oh shoot, the sugar plum macchiato. I really liked that. Well, I tried something recently that I really liked. Now I can't remember what it was. But anyway, part of it is because it's kind of out of the way, like for me to go to Dunkin' Donuts. So if I'm gonna go there just to get coffee, it's like 10 minutes farther than Starbucks. There aren't that many Dunkin' Donuts around in Indianapolis. Oh, okay. So we sat down and we just kind of visited and hung out. And got to know David's girlfriend. And then they had pizza delivered from this place I had never heard of before. And it was fun. Caroline got cheese pizza for me and Alex. And we sat in the dining room table. And she had candles lit everywhere. And she had the table all decorated for Easter and stuff. And she said that... she was like showing us all of her Easter stuff. We're gonna go over there for Easter too. We're gonna have like Easter dinner at her house, which will be nice. And yeah, and then afterwards we sat around and just kind of talked and hung out. And I had more coffee, and we watched The Voice, all of us together. And then I never just like watch that. It's so funny because like when we go to Caroline's house, there's always like some show that we all sit there and watch, like something like family show, like, you know, America's Funniest Home Videos, or The Voice. What were we watching that night that like her stepson and his wife were watching? Oh God, it was, what were we all sitting there watching? It was like some trivia show or something. So we always watch some show like that together as a family. It was fun. I don't really watch The Voice that often. So yeah, we had a good time, and then we left, and then Alex went over to Sarah's for like an hour. And then, because he hadn't seen her all weekend, and I was going to get a fountain pop with Tanya, but she was putting up wallpaper because she and her husband are redoing their front room. And like they had part of it painted, and then they were putting up the wallpaper. Caroline's getting wallpaper in her bathroom too, which is so funny to me. Like, I didn't think people like did wallpaper anymore. I like wallpaper a lot, but I didn't think that people really did it. And I said that to Caroline. She goes, "Oh, wallpaper is like really back. Like people really like it again." But I like wallpaper, so she was showing us what she's going to do with her bathroom. And so Tanya and Eric were putting up this wallpaper. So I was like, okay, well, maybe tomorrow night or something. So I laid down with the pups for like an hour. And now I'm here vlogging with you guys. Hi, how are you? I'm having water. We always talk about, Caroline and I always talk about how we like need to see each other more, and we need to get together as a family more, which I totally agree. But what was so funny is, like, when we were little, like, we saw each other a lot. Because, like, my mom and I would go over to my aunt and uncle a lot on weekends. I can remember my mom being like, come on, let's pack a little bag, and we're gonna go over there, bring some toys with you, and some books. Always books, you know. Toys and stuff. And then we would go over there, like not every weekend, but a lot of weekends. I mean, a lot of weekends we would go over there. And my friend Valerie wanted to go to eat at Rosie's place the other day, and she said Carmel, but I think she meant Zionsville, which is right over there. I don't think I've ever been there before. My mom used to come here, and she would go with her friends sometimes. It's so cute. This is like old Zionsville. You can like walk around and stuff. It's really cute. But anyway, in fact, when we were going to that restaurant the other night that I showed you, Caroline was like, you guys should go to Zionsville and you can like walk around afterwards, which would have been fun. But it has blue lights out front. Look at that, blue lights. So anyway, yeah, but when I was a little kid, we would go over there and stay on the weekends and stuff. And I can remember Caroline had like 2 twin beds in her bedroom, and then she had this day bed, and like this little day bed, and it was right next to the window, and I would always sleep in the day bed. And you know, if I was sleeping there by myself, I probably would have been terrified, you know, because I always like have this thinking, you know. I mean, back then I wasn't so much into serial killers, but I had a wild imagination of, you know, killers and things. And so I can remember laying there on that bed and like looking out the window and like looking to see if people were out there and stuff like that. While my mom would sleep in one and Caroline would sleep in the other one. Those were fun weekends, and I can remember, you know, like on like one night, like Friday nights, when we would get over there, my aunt would make. My aunt always made a lot of like, I mean, she was a great cook, but she would make like a huge pot of like homemade chicken noodle soup or some kind of stew or chili, and then she would make like a big bread to go with it, or like muffins. So we would have like soup and like bread and like a salad for dinner. And I can remember she just would like send home tons of it with my mom. And as my mom got older too, my aunt would like have her over and she would say, I'm sending you I made all this soup and bread and stuff, and she would always send my mom home with soup and bread. I think that was kind of her like caretaking way, because she knew like, you know, it'd be real easy for my mom to heat up some soup and like, you know, homemade bread and stuff. Anyway, my aunt was a fantastic cook, so we would do that like on like a Friday night, and then we would all watch some movie together, or Caroline and I would like play or watch a movie while they were like watching some adult movie or something. And then Saturday, like in the summers, I can remember the woman across the street, Caroline and I were talking about her tonight. She was like this really nice woman, and she has like a huge house. It was like the biggest house in the neighborhood, and she had like a private pool and stuff. And she let all the neighborhood kids swim over there, and we would all go over there and swim and stuff. So I can remember going over there and swimming, and then like I think we would come home and take naps or something, and then eat dinner. And then in the evenings, you know, like my mom and aunt's friends would come over, and so they would have like, you know, a little get together. And I remember in the summer on my aunt's patio, she had this huge backyard, and it was all flat, like flat, like no curves to it whatsoever. And it was like this huge fence. And so when you walked out, it was like, the house was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was like living room, bedroom, and then living room over here. Like it was like, you know, family room, nice living room, and then bedroom. And all of it had windows that looked out over the patio. So like wherever you walked out in the back to the house, all went to this like concrete patio. And my aunt and uncle had this like gorgeous wrought iron furniture. And then there was like grass, just like, you know, all around the house. I mean, obviously, but it was like just this huge yard of grass out there. And so it was like a perfect place to have like, you know, little dinner parties and, you know, a little cocktail hour and stuff like that. And so like people would just come in and out on a Saturday night. And I can remember, you know, like my aunt would just kind of have like some kind of buffet dinner kind of deal, like in the kitchen, or she would put out in the dining room. And then people would like come over and they'd have cocktails, and, you know, and there'd be like a salad and like, you know, some kind of main beef Wellington or little sandwiches or, you know, sliders or whatever. I mean, really always very nice food. But I can remember, you know, my aunt would put out the whole spread, and then people just kind of come and go. And that was our weekends. And then my mom and I would get up the next morning on Sundays, and we would go to church, and then we would go home after that. And I can remember there was always kind of like a little letdown of that to me. Like, you know, it was just my mom and I on those weekends that I was with her. So it was kind of like there was some sadness associated with like not having like a bigger family, you know. I think that's part of the reason why we went over there. I mean, I know my mom was like scared of the house that we lived in. She'd always say, I don't know why she didn't sell it sooner, honestly. But she would say, like, this house really scares me. It's so big, and I feel like, you know, alone in it and whatever. But, at the same time, I don't think she wanted to leave that house because it was, like, all she knew for so long, you know? I don't know. But, so we would go over to my aunt and uncle's a lot. So I saw Caroline a lot. But then when Caroline got into high school, you know, when she was, you know, I was 3 years behind her. So, of course, she wasn't going to want to hang out with me a bunch. Now, like that one summer that I've talked about, like, I think it would have been right when she turned 16. It would have been the summer after because... yeah, so it would have been the summer after that. Like, I would have been 13, and my dad, like, I was with my dad a lot that summer because my mom, I don't know if that was, I think she had, like, some, like, full-time job or something, and she asked my dad if I could be with him more that summer. And so, but my dad was, like, working. And there was a trip that my dad went out of town on. It was like a business trip. And so, Caroline, like, stayed with me out there. And then I also can remember there was a 1 week that she came out there in the mornings and picked me up, and, like, we hung out and did stuff all day long. And then, like, she would go home. And then, but there was also a week that, I think maybe, like, that was like a preparatory week, just to kind of see how it went. I don't know. I don't even really remember. Neither does she when we talk about it. All I know is that she stayed out there with me for a week, so I wasn't by myself. Obviously, because my dad wasn't going to leave me out there by myself. I kind of wonder if it was a tennis thing, because my dad and my stepmom used to go to, like, everything tennis. They used to go to the French Open, and they would go to the US Open, and they would go to Wimbledon, and they went to all of it. I kind of wonder if it was something like that. And they were gone for, like, an entire week, and so Caroline stayed with me then. I don't know, because that would have been in the summer. And I would have had to have somebody take me to tennis, and that would have been why she would have, like, driven me back and forth, and we were driving a lot, because I do remember that. Maybe that's what it is. I don't remember. I really don't, but I just remember that she and I spent, like, a lot of time that summer together, and I remember that movie, maybe this is a different summer or a different time, I don't know. But that movie, because I wanted to see it because I loved Demi Moore, About Last Night came out, and Caroline and I went and saw it. And I remember I was, like, too young to go see it. We went and saw it, just the two of us. Which is still, to this day, one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. Have you ever seen it? With Demi Moore and what's his name? Rob Lowe. God, he's different today, isn't he? I mean, he still looks good today, but he's different than he was back then. Anyway, the old days of growing up. I don't know why I remember this, but, like, my aunt always had, like, I think the Schwan Man came to her house. Do you guys know that, like, the Schwan Man? I always wanted to have the Schwan Man come to our house, but my mom said it was too expensive. He was the guy that drove around the truck, and it had, like, a swan on it. Is it Swan or is it Schwan Man? I don't know, but anyway. And I remember, like, our neighbors on the street, like, there was this one neighbor, and they always got, like, the big, like, Mike Lay's or whatever potato chips, and then they also got, like, the chocolate chip cookies, like a big container of it. And I was so jealous, and I always wanted to get the Schwan Man because of that. And my mom was like, no, it's too expensive, we don't need that. And but I don't remember what my aunt got, but I do remember that they got milk and ice cream, and that's all I remember from him, because they would put it outside the door. Do you guys remember that? Does anybody still order from him? You know what, I swore that, like, the Schwan Man was gone, But like recently I was like, somebody had mentioned, oh, I still order from the Schwan Man. When I said something about it in a vlog, this is probably 3 to 6 months ago. And then after I had said it in a video, I started seeing the Schwan Man like everywhere. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's like, you can look it up online, but it's like food that you order and then they deliver it to your house like once a month or something. But like with Costco and stuff like that today, there's probably not like a reason to get it. But yeah, I remember our neighbors always got the chocolate chip cookies and the potato chips. And I was always so jealous because I wanted them. I can remember going to the grocery store. My mother was such a penny pincher. I mean, she really was her whole life. I can remember going to the grocery store and I would want those little containers of cereal, and my mom would, I mean, she would let me get them every once in a while, but she'd always be like, there's such a waste of money. She'd be like, there's only like, because I would only eat like 3 of them on there. I'd eat like, you know, Cocoa Pebbles, Frosted Flakes, and like one other kind or whatever. And the rest of them was like Corn Flakes and whatever. I just wouldn't eat those. And I always, because I was obsessed with like anything that was like little. I loved little books. I loved those little boxes. I loved like the little Coke bottles. Do you guys remember those when I was a kid? I wanted all of those things. I think I read like those books, The Littles or something like that. I read some book that had to do with like people that were like shrunk or something, or miniature, and like little miniature towns, you know? And so like I was obsessed with that. And so I always wanted like small stuff. I don't know why. I'm not so silly. Caroline and I were talking tonight about, I couldn't believe it. And when we were growing up, so my mom and my aunt, they went to this country club here in Indianapolis. And it really wasn't a country club. It was, I mean, it is to this day. If you said to somebody, it's not a, they would say, oh yes, it is a country club. Like you have to pay fees to be a member. But it's not fancy or anything. I mean, it's just rather, but they have like a huge pool with like a diving pit, like an Olympic diving pit and stuff. And my mom used to talk about how when she would go there in high school with her friends, there was this girl that was like 2 years older at IU who apparently my dad like dated, and she was an Olympic diver, and she used to practice at Rivi Country Club. It was called Rivi, R-I-V-I, Riviera Country Club. And she used to practice there in the summers. And my mom said, I can remember my friends and I, we were so jealous of her, and she could do like perfect dives. And anyway, she went on to like dive in the Olympics or something, and she went to IU. But so like my mom, so it's in like Broad Ripple area, which is like where my office is, but between Broad Ripple and Meridian Hills. And that was like, my mom and my aunt changed schools like 10 times because, you know, my grandma was so poor, so they were constantly moving and things like that. And so they moved, I think like because they had a lot of apartment leases, and then they started renting houses. But they moved like 10 times in 12 years. Or 8 times in 12 years or something. I can't remember what my mom said. But like a constant was the Riviera Country Club. And so they had like, and it was super inexpensive to be a member there. Like for an entire summer, it was like cheap back then. And so my grandma would get my mom, and Caroline said it tonight. She said, yeah, like probably like daycare. My grandma would get them memberships for the summer. I can remember my mom one time saying that they had memberships and my grandma didn't, which I think is so funny. But anyway, they had memberships, so they would go there with their friends like literally every day in the summer. And my mom used to talk about how she would like that, because that was when she started coloring her hair. Like from 7th to 8th grade, she like changed her hair color. She had like brown hair, and then like she started dyeing her hair in the summer with like lemon juice and things like that, and putting bleach in her hair. And she would put I think something that she put in, I could be completely wrong, but I want to say like iodine or something like that in her baby oil. And they would like grease up at the pool and stuff. My mom, till the day she died, loved laying out at the pool. She loved it. And my mom could be there at like 8 in the morning with magazines and a book and treats and, you know, sodas and stuff, and she could literally lay out there the entire day. My mom loved laying out at the pool. And, so in our neighborhood, Laura's grandma, she kind of runs the show in our neighborhood, and my mom and her did not get along. And, the first summer that like Alex and I lived there, he and I were laying out, and and she talks real loud too, because she's kind of hard of hearing. Laura's my neighbor to the right, and she's been in a couple of my videos. So, and Laura's always like, yeah, she says things she shouldn't say, like real loud, and then I'm like, Grandma. But anyway, Alex and I were, I've told this story I think on here before, it's funny. Alex and I were laying out at the pool, and we were like at one end and she was at the other end, and she and this other woman were sitting like in like just, you know, regular like table chairs, and they were sitting up straight. And so we're both laying there, and the other one woman was like, now who are those boys down there, or something like that, or who are those guys down there? And she said, that's Peter Monn. She has like an East Coast accent, and she was like, she said something like, his mother was a bipolar manic depressive. And I was like, what did she just say about my mother? Because I know that my mother didn't ever, and was never diagnosed with those things. I know she never talked to her about her mental health issues. I mean, my mother suffered from depression her whole life, but anyway. So she was like, oh, really? And she was like, that's so sad. And she's like, how'd she say it next? She said, yeah, she's like, they just moved in here this year. And she's like, and that's his boyfriend, Alex. And she goes, two nice homosexuals I've never met. And Alex, up to that point, he's just like listening to the conversation, and all of a sudden he just like bursts out laughing. And she's like deadpan, like completely like just 100% means it, you know? So anyway, she cracks me up, but I will say this, like, she does such a great job. It's kind of like, I mean, I think every neighborhood has to have a busybody. You know, she does such a nice job of like making sure like everything is like taken care of, and you know, if somebody's out of town, she's like looking after their house, and you know, it's nice. I mean, like my mom would always say that about her. She'd say, you know, like, no, we don't really get along, but she was like, I love that she cares this much about our community, because it makes it look really nice, and our condo community does look really, really nice, and she's one of the people that makes it that way. So but that was so funny, wasn't it? Two nice homosexuals I've never met. Oh my gosh. Caroline and we were talking tonight, because Caroline said, I remember going to Riviera Club. And I said, well, I remember going too when I was a little kid. And Caroline said, I still have my tag. And I said, no, you don't. Because we used to have these tags, and she said we would sew it into our bathing suit. And I said, no, we would take a safety pin and put it in there. And she was like, oh, that's right. And she got up and she went into the kitchen, and literally 2 seconds later brought it back. And it said her number on it, and it like and then across it said like in metal, like, you know, engraved in metal. It said, because she said she was born in 69, and it said 1974, and she was like, that, or 1976, I can't remember, 76, because I said, Caroline, that can't be, because she said that was the last year that that I went, because we moved to the other house. And I said, well, we must have continued to go to Rivy, because I can remember going after that. I remember going as a little kid, and I would have been 4 in 76, and we didn't move down here until, we didn't move here from Chicago until I was almost 5. So there's no way. And she was like, well, I don't know, maybe. But anyway, my mom used to tell me stories about how, where am I at on time? How Rivy was, Caroline and I were trying to figure out what year it would have been, because my aunt graduated from high school in 59, and my mom graduated from high school in 61. So we were like, because my mom said it would have been, I think my mom said it was when she was in junior high. So we were trying to figure out the exact like years that it would have been. But it was always such a big deal to my mom, and she would tell me stories about it because, you know, my mom was such a, you know, a human rights activist, and the civil rights movement. It stopped. I knew it wasn't going to stop. But anyway, my mom, you know, was such a civil rights activist, and the civil rights movement was important to her, and the human rights, you know, human rights were important to her. But she would tell me she remembered when the Riviera Club, it was the first pool in Indianapolis. She said, I don't know if this is fact, but this is what she said. It was the first integrated pool in Indianapolis. And she said it was a huge deal, like when it happened. Like huge, huge deal. Like members like quit and stuff like that. And I can remember my mom just being like so upset thinking back about that, you know, and being like, can you imagine even that? I haven't been to Rivy in so long. I remember going there one time in the winter, though, for something. Caroline said she went there for like this auction thing, this fundraiser. I don't remember going there, but I don't remember why I was there, but I remember going there in the winter and looking out over the pools. And you know, like when you're a little kid and everything seems like so big and everything, and I remember it didn't look as big to me, and it was weird looking at it too. It's like all of this, like, you know, cement that was painted white, like these pools, you know, and the lines outside, and it looked just kind of like sad and depressing in the summer, you know, or in the winter it was sad, you know, with no, it's so funny driving by these now because this is where Alex and I stayed, the Ironworks, for Valentine's Day. It's so funny driving by now because, and it's like, oh, that's where we stayed. I'm like, we can do it again sometime. That was fun. But what was I saying? Yeah, I don't remember why I was there, but I was there in the winter, and I can remember looking out over the pool. And there was snow out there and stuff, too. It must have been like the dead of winter. I wonder what I was there for. Isn't that funny, though, like when you go back to see things that, like, when you were a kid seems so big, and then you go back as an adult, and it seems like so small. I remember being in, like, junior high, and my elementary school used to have this, like, fall fundraiser they did every year. And I remember I went back for it like 2 or 3 years after that. It was so fun. They had like a cakewalk and all this silly stuff, right? And I loved it when I was in elementary school there. I loved it. I loved going to this like fundraiser, and it was always in the fall, and I can remember going there with like my mom and like a family friend would go, and like one of their kids. And so it was like the one time I was at school that, like, you know, I didn't, like, kids weren't mean to me. I mean, it was an after school thing, you know, so the other kids would be like, hi Peter, you know, and whatever, and I'd be with this friend of mine that nobody knew because she went to some school across town or whatever, right? That's what I remember one year. And so, what is this car doing? This car is playing tricks. It's like a sports car, and it's like slowing way down. It's wanting me to pull up so it can like go right past me. I know that's what it's gonna do. It's gonna have me go past it, then it's gonna go vroom, like way past me. Anyway, but I can remember going one year. I don't remember who would have been with us. I think it was my mom's friend. She's one of her sorority sisters and her daughter that she was really good friends with that I've talked about on here. And we went, and I can just remember thinking it was like so magical, you know, and it was after hours. But years later I went, like when I was in junior high, maybe 7th grade or something, and I can remember going back and thinking like the chairs were so small, and like everything was so small. It was just like so weird. The song Closer by 9 Inch Nails just came on. I love that song. But I just remember everything being so completely like small. I remember walking through the library, you know, and It's weird as you get older, like your perception of things changes. It's like at every age that you're at, you think like, you know, like when you're growing up and your parents are like, oh, you think you know everything at your age. It's not like really like a bad thing. Like you really do kind of think you know, like from your perception at that moment, like what you know. You think you know everything, right? And the reality is in that moment, you really probably do know the capacity of what you can know at that age, right? So it's kind of like a ridiculous put down when people say that. It's like, well, I know what I know at my age. What more could I know, you know? But I look back at like 23 or 24, and I think like at that age, like, you know, and I was 2 years, like a year to 2 years sober, and I really thought I had my stuff together, and I really knew all, you know? And then like, I have like friends of mine whose kids are like 23 and 24, and I'm like, oh my God, they seem so young. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me when I think back on that age and what I was doing. And, you know, and even before that, like 18, 19, 20, when I was living like this very adult life, and I was hanging around with adults, like doing a lot of, you know, substances and using and stuff. And, you know, it's really weird. I had kind of this flashback, not flashback, like I had kind of forgotten this. I think there's a lot about my using or those days that like it's not that I forget, it's that I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's not conscious unless like I see it in a movie or like somebody brings up a story or I see somebody from that time period of my life, which I rarely ever do see somebody from that time period. That'll be like, oh, do you remember this? And I was watching It's a Sin, and there's a part in there when one of the characters dates this older guy, and he goes to this dinner, and it's like these three older guys, gay guys, and I'm doing that because it's a part of the movie, whether or not he's gay. But anyway, or the show. That's why I did the, you know, quotes. But anyway, but it's like these three older gay guys, and they each have like young boyfriends that are sitting there and are kind of just like silent and like arm candy kind of thing, you know? And what's really weird about that is I had a friend of mine back in the day, and I remember like, and I wasn't super close with him, but I remember like he kind of would like be with friends with somebody for a month, and then friends with somebody else for a month, and like friends with somebody else. We kind of went through friends, and he had a boyfriend, like consistently had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend was like, so he was probably 3 or 4 years older than me. So if I was like, let's say 20, he was probably like 23 or 24 at the time. And his boyfriend, when he was like 23 or 24, was, I'm not even lying to you, probably 65, okay? And I can remember he was like, and I was like at that time a very like kind of edgy dresser, you know, like I just was always very fun style, you know, like just, you know. And I remember he was like, I want you to go to this party with me. And I was like, okay. And so I went with him, and like that scene and that show totally reminded me of that. I went to this party, and he was like, okay, you need to wear like a polo, like a button-down shirt or a polo shirt. And he told me like what I should wear. And I can kind of remember him at my apartment, and we went there together. And he was like, you need to wear like a button-down shirt or like a polo shirt with like khakis and like penny loafers. And I was like, okay, like he kind of like picked out my outfit. I can remember thinking the whole thing was kind of fun. And he was like, these guys are gonna love you and blah, 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 blah. And I remember I went there, and it was like so weird. And it was like all these older guys that were like 65, and they all had like boyfriends that were like right by them and almost didn't speak. I mean, it was almost like identical to the show. And I remember I was like standing in the kitchen and like, or something, and I can remember this one guy was like, talking to me, and he said something about like, I had been drinking quite a bit. I remember like I would drink a lot at parties and just walk out and leave. And I don't even know how I would call somebody to come and get me. This is when we had payphones, y'all. I would go to a payphone, and I can remember I like pissed this friend of mine off so bad because he was like, "You're gonna ruin a good thing for me," and I was like, "That's not a good thing, okay? Like, I don't know what you think that is, but that's not." Anyway, he was so mad at me, and I got real drunk, and these guys were like in the kitchen, and they were talking about like something about like redoing I've totally like turned into this now, redoing the curtains or something like that, and they were like, "What color do you think would look good in here?" And I was like, I don't really give a F. You know what I mean? I was like, where's the free drinks? I don't give an F, you know? And the guy was like, "Oh my lord, to be spoken to that way," or something like that. And I was like, you know what, F you, I'm out of here. And I like walked out. And I remember my friend was so mad because they told him, like, don't ever bring him into our house again. It was like this couple that hosted all these parties and stuff. And I was like, I don't really care. Like, I don't really care if I'm ever invited to another one of those boring parties ever again in my entire life. You know, he kind of disappeared from the social scene, and then he appeared like 20 years later, and then I never really thought about it. You know, I kind of wonder if, like, he was with that guy until the guy died. Like, I have no idea to this day. Kind of like had like a falling. We didn't have a falling out. We just stopped just kind of talking. But anyway, it's weird the things you see in movies and TV shows that remind you of your life. You know, my friend, like, that show so much reminded me of my friends that lived downtown. They all lived in that apartment together. Like, so much of it reminded me of that. Like, all of us getting over there and having like a big party with like 30 people. Like, that's what that totally, like, there's a scene like that in the first episode. It totally reminded me of that. And just like everybody hanging out and, you know, having good times, and then going out to the clubs. And that's a show that will definitely stick with me for a long time. Like, I really feel like I know those characters. They were all of them so fantastic that played in that show. So fantastic. Actually, like, people ask me who is my favorite character in that show, and it's not for this reason, but I really like the character Colin. But Colin is like very sweet in the show, you know, and like somebody said something at the very end. I think it's Richie. He's like, he did everything right. He never did anything wrong, you know. And you know, anyway, he reminded me of this guy that I went on like a couple dates with, or a date with. And we were really good friends. He was really a nice guy. And I remember he moved away. And he passed away like a year or two later. And I, like, to this day have no idea like what he died from. I think it was like an overdose or something, which was so weird because, like, at the time that I knew him, he never did drugs. That was really consistent, though, I have to tell you, that storyline. That, like, well, storyline, but I mean, that truism. That, like, when I was out there using a lot, there were so many people that I knew that would never touch a drug, ever. Literally would not touch a drug. And then when I got sober, I would hear about somebody passing away, and I would say, well, how did they pass away? And they'd say, oh, you know, like, they died on this, or they died on that, or, you know, like, they got hooked on Tina, which is meth. That's what they call it a lot in the gay community. And I'd be like, you know, or they overdosed on pain pills, and it would be people that I had never known, like, ever to use. And, like, within a matter of 3 months, they were gone. And I just was like, God, it's so sad, you know? So sad. People don't realize the power of... I think that was so frustrating to me, you know, like, back then. I don't feel that way so much today, but, like, I wanted people to learn from what I had gone through. I wanted people to realize that their lives didn't have to end up, you know, in treatment or getting sober or whatever. And, like, And what's really sad about that is, like, in all those years of everybody, I mean, no, at that time, anybody that knew me would have told you Peter Monn has a serious, drinking and drug problem. I never once, I have one friend of mine from, I mean, do I just have one? Well, my good friend that I just met a couple years ago, she and I used to, like, party with all the same people, and we, like, never met back in the day. We think that's so crazy. But I do have one friend that she and I used to party together a lot, and she got sober in a different program, and she's still sober today. But she got sober probably 5 or 10 years after I did. And she's really cool. But other than that, I don't like, and not that it matters, but I never had anybody come up to me and was like, like, I got sober because I heard that you did it, or, things got too bad for me, and I came, nobody came to me and asked me, like, how did you get help? I mean, that never happened. Maybe once or twice, like, it really in an indirect kind of way, but there was really no follow through with it. And I think it was frustrating. I remember it being frustrating for me, because I was like, I wish these people would learn, instead of, like, I mean, I have close friends of mine that passed from overdoses and just messed up drug stuff, and I'd be like, I wish my friends would learn, or I'd see them and they just look so physically bad, like, just whittled down versions of themselves. When I hadn't seen somebody, in 6 months, and the last time I saw them, they were working out every day, and, I'll tell you, like, methamphetamine really did a job on the gay community, and, it just really took out some great people, and, as it did, not just in the gay community, but all across the world, and, like, I mean, this is why I think it's so important to talk about the epidemic of addiction. I literally, would see people, and then, like, 6 months later, I'd run into them, and they just looked so sick, and they just looked like they had lost, like, 80 pounds, and they were, like, nervous all the time. And I'd say to my friends, I'd be like, what happened? And they'd be like, yeah, they're totally, like, hooked on Tina. And I'm like, God, that's so sad. Like, And I think we're afraid to talk about it because it's so stigmatized in our, world, that it's like, but like I say, like, I think people have this idea that if you're an addict, you're a bad person trying to get good, when that's not it at all. It's like, we're sick people trying to get well, and these are people that need help. I think one of the scariest things to me today is, with alcoholism, you can see it in somebody because they're drinking all the time and it's affecting their lives, right? Like, alcoholism is one part of addiction that is probably the easiest to spot. And with, like, methamphetamine, it's pretty easy to spot. Pain pills, people are passing out all the time if they're taking them regularly. But, with, like, oxys and, heroin and stuff like that, the really scary thing about it is that there's so many people out there that are maintenance using these substances that, and what I mean by that is that they're not using it so much to get high. It's like they're using it because they can't get wean off of it because they'll get dope sick. That, like, somebody could have, like, shot up 5 minutes before you saw them, and you might not even know it. But then what happens is they start trying to mess with it and take themselves off of it, or, not have a doctor put them on Suboxone, but they put themselves on it or something like that, and they're manipulating it back and forth. And then they end up hurting themselves because they don't realize what they're doing to their bodies. And I've heard that story over and over and over and over and over and over again, breaks my heart. And I think that's why we have to keep on talking about it, you know? And, like Tanya and I were talking about this the other night about like there's so many like people today. It's different today than when I got sober, you know? And I don't think like I'm any better or worse. I just think that it's a different mentality. And like I fought stuff in early sobriety. Like I had a boyfriend. I should never have. I don't know how I'm sitting here today, but that's part of my journey. That's part of my story. But other than that, like I pretty much did everything my sponsor told me to do. I asked a lot of questions. I asked the question why a lot, and he'd say just shut your mouth and do it. And I learned to, you know, shut my mouth and open my ears, which is a saying that I just needed to listen. But like the things I did in early sobriety are really not a whole lot different than what I do now in my life, in my sobriety. And it's just about doing it, repeating it over and over and over again, you know, and that's what works, you know. And it's kind of like, if your medicine makes you feel better, why stop taking it kind of thing? It's kind of like that kind of attitude, and this is my medicine, you know. And I was telling Tanya, I said, like, I was so, like, we were talking about going to meetings. I mean, I literally went to a meeting or two every single day for my first 2 years sober. Literally every day I did not miss a meeting, including holidays. And I can remember, you know, like on my calendar writing down like what meetings I went to and how often I went to. I think I got that from my mom, because I can remember my mom did that too. Like, but she had a few trial runs and 12-step programs before she went to meetings. And I can remember finding calendars where she had written down like what meetings she went to and stuff. Oh, Depeche Mode again. But anyway, I was saying to Tanya, it was like, I did not like question not going to meetings or calling my sponsor. Like, I was so terrified of using and picking up. And she was like, of dying? I said, no, I think of being homeless. I don't even know that I really could conceptualize dying from it. Like, even though I had come so close, I don't really think I ever really thought that was going to happen. Even though now I look back and I'm like, how did it not happen? But I could see that I could be homeless with no family, no friends. No, I mean, my friends were just as done as my family was, the majority of them. And I was like terrified that like I didn't know how to like take care of myself or do anything. And so that was a lot of it, you know. And that was why, like, I mean, I hadn't really lived as a human being for quite some time. I mean, really, I hadn't, you know. It was like walking ghost. And so to just have a cup of coffee in the morning in my coffee maker, or like a, you know, like a sandwich like I was talking about one night, you know, and clean clothes and vacuuming my carpet and making that place look nice and, you know, making my bed every day, like that was a lot for me. My battery is flashing. And that was a lot for me, and going to a meeting, but it made me feel human, you know. And honestly, getting a job that year, you know, it was 5 months. Okay, I'm back. I had to get off the interstate so that I could change my battery. But anyway, yeah, when I got that job, I can remember just like, I remember my first paycheck. That job was like $6 or $7 an hour. I can't remember how much I was making. But my first paycheck was like $4 something. And that was for like 80 hours of work. And I can remember being so proud of that paycheck. Like, at first I was like, oh my God, like, I could have made this in a couple hours, you know, like, dealing. And then I was like, but I was so proud of that paycheck, you know, because, like, I had earned it, you know, and by working. And it was a big deal to me. I don't know. It was just like, it was pieces like that, you know, at a time. I can remember my sponsor coming in. I had, like, wine bottles all around the top of my kitchen, like, on the cabinets. And he was like, what is this, like, you know, shrine to alcohol? And he was like, come on, let's take, this was like my first sponsor. It was actually, was it my first sponsor, or was it just this guy that I knew? I think it might have just been this guy that I knew, anyway, that I was friends with. He was like, come on, we're taking this all, was it my sponsor? I don't remember, honestly. And he was like, come on, we're gonna take this all down. And then, no, I think it was my sponsor. And he made me God, I can't believe I can't remember. But anyway, I had to throw away like all of my glasses that were like, margarita glasses, martini glasses, any of that kind of stuff. I had special like these ice cubes that I had from Pier 1 that you could like freeze and they looked cool. Anything like that I had to like throw out. And I remember I had all these trash bags, and we were like going out to the trash. He goes, come on, let's take them out to the trash can. And I was like, okay. And so I like picked one up. I started walking, and I was like, aren't you gonna grab one? He goes, oh no, this isn't my burden to carry, or something like that. He was like, this is yours to carry. And I was like, oh, okay. So we're serious about this. My first sponsor used to check and make sure that I had made my bed every day, and and he would ask me questions like, did you take a shower today? Did you make your bed? Because those were things that made me feel like a human being again. And I don't really know how you can explain that to somebody that hasn't felt that before. That the power of addiction is so dehumanizing, because you become so focused on just using, and getting high, and that's all you think about. And just getting it, and, using, and you don't think about those things, I don't think I really even realized, like, how far down I had fallen until I was, like, in treatment. And it wasn't at first, either. It was, like, after a couple days. I remember my dad brought me a bunch of clothes in treatment, and this was also kind of, like, a sign of how my dad really didn't know me. I remember he brought me clothes in treatment, like, he packed a bag for me, and it was, like, all stuff, like, I hadn't worn in forever, and I would never wear. I remember there was, like, this orange plaid, like, flannel shirt that I had, and I thought it was so bizarre that he brought it to me. But, like, being in treatment, I can remember, like, one of my favorite things, I've never been somebody that can, go to sleep early, and one of my favorite things was that in the cafeteria late at night, well, they would put snacks in the refrigerator about 10 o'clock in the lounge, in the men's lounge, sure, in the women's lounge, too, because we had, like, a men's unit and a women's unit, and there was, like, a nurse's station in between. And I can remember, like, in the cafeteria, they would put, like, a plate of sandwiches that they had already made, or, like, lunch meat. You could make your own sandwich. And then they would have, like, potato salad and, like, bag of chips and stuff like that, and cookies. And you could have as much of it as you wanted. Chocolate milk and all this kind of stuff. And I can remember going down there, and I would make, like, a plate of, like, 3 sandwiches and potato chips and whatever. And I would go outside, smoke, because it was so cold, and you had to smoke, like, off the cafeteria door, and it was, like, snowing outside. And then I would come in, and I would make myself, like, snacks, and I was reading all these Michael Crichton books when I was in treatment, and I would go back to the lounge, and I would sit there, and I would eat these treats and read these Michael Crichton books. And I can see myself going into the cafeteria, and it was pitch black, and they just had this one overhead light on where, like, the food was, and we would go in there. I always thought the food was so good in treatment. But I hadn't eaten well in a long time, so it was like, but I just remember those, like, late night snacks. There's something about a sandwich, like a nice sandwich, that can really make you feel human, And I remember eating those, and it was the same way when my dad would bring me, like, or make, give me groceries after I got out of treatment. It was like lunch meat and bread and cheese, and I would make a sandwich every day and eat it. And I don't know, there was something human about it. And that early years of sobriety, that was about all I could do, It was just enough for me to, like, do the bare minimum and not pick up, and exist. I do think that's one thing that's changed a lot today, is that I think unless people are in, like, long-term, like, residential programs or halfway houses, and even halfway houses I think expect a lot of people today, But I think one of the things is like somebody gets sober and we expect you to like in like a week, you know, be like back at like a 40-hour a week job and going to meetings. I mean, it's a lot to expect, you know. And back then there wasn't a lot of that. I mean, it was like, well, the only thing that I didn't do that was recommended to me, and I wish I had, and there was only one at the time, and it was at St. Vincent's Hospital, was going into an assisted living program. Like a halfway house. I wish I had done that in retrospect, because all of my friends that did that, they had like such great experiences, and they became friends with a lot of people they were in the halfway houses with that they're, you know, still friends with today. But I didn't do that. I just wanted to be back in my apartment. And I think also I was always kind of like afraid of like, well, will there be other gay people there? Will I be accepted? Will I be made fun of? Like, that was always like a concern of mine, and treatment as well. Just why I told my counselor, like, we're not going to talk about me being gay. And she was like, okay. And she went into group and said, Peter wants everybody to know we're not going to talk about him being gay. That's not what he's here for. They all laughed. They didn't care. They didn't care at all. But I think today, you know, people are just rushed through things, you know, instead of like really realizing how difficult it is to put one foot in front of the other and just not pick up for a day. Like, that's a lot, you know, especially for an addict that's been using for a long time, or an alcoholic that's been using for a long time. To just not use for a day is a lot. It's a lot. You know, I had tried to quit on my own for many years. Well, I should say, I tried to quit many times over several years. It wasn't like many years, but oh my God, I was talking about that one night on here, that Secret to My Success movie with Michael J. Fox, except for I didn't call him Michael J. Fox, I called him something else, and people, like, in the comment sections were laughing. They were like, oh my God, you called, I can't remember what I think I called him Michael J. Keaton or something, which was Michael, I think that was his name on, like, part of his name or something. Michael Keaton is the actor, right? There's Michael J. Fox, that's the actor that was on was it Family Ties? Anyway, but he was also in that movie, Secret to My Success, and I loved that movie back in the day. I don't know why. I don't even really remember it today. And, but it had that song in it, that bow, bow song. Oh my God, and then I talked about Axel F, and somebody said in the comment section, they said, oh my God, I love that song, Axel F. So funny. Perkins Restaurant and Bakery. Comfort food, comfortable prices, 24 hours, Friday and Saturday. Perkins sounds good. I'm kind of hungry because I really didn't eat that much pizza. But Perkins is not open 24 hours, and I will not be going there. It's only, well, I guess it's open 24 hours on Fridays and Saturdays, but it's Sundays, so it's not open. Nothing's really open 24 hours anymore. I wonder when stuff will go back to being open more. Boom, bow, bow. Do you guys remember that movie? I feel like my life is a constant, like, remembering of old movies. And books. And people and times and places and memories and things that happen. This car is, like, all over the road and going like a mile a minute, too. These Red Lobster, those cheddar rolls, I think I've only ever had those like once in my life, and people always talk about those cheddar rolls. Whenever people are talking about like Red Lobster, which I have, to be honest, I don't really know anybody that loves Red Lobster that much. Every time somebody says something about it, who was telling me recently about it, and they're like, oh, I always get sick when I get Red Lobster. But I don't eat fish. I never really have eaten fish. But I went there one time with this guy that I dated, and his mom and his sister and his niece. I think his sister was there. And that was like the one and only time I went, and that would have been like when I was like, well, that was the guy that I dated before I got sober, so I would have been like 22, 21 at the time. So I have not been to Red Lobster in like 26 years. Isn't that so weird? It's literally never a place I think of ever wanting to go. I used to love Dionne Warwick so much back in the day. There was this whole album of hers. I don't know what it's called. I downloaded a couple of the songs on my iTunes, but the songs are... I had to get them off of the soundtrack for The Woman in Red. Do you guys remember that movie? With Gene Wilder. And it's also got the girl from Weird Science in it, the woman from Weird Science. It's like beautiful. I can't remember what her name is. But LeBlanc. Kelly LeBlanc. Kelly, is that her name? Do you guys, I don't know how I just remember that. Do you guys remember her? I think she was maybe married to like, oh, I'm going to say something. This is going to show what an idiot I am. Was she married to like Steven Seagal? So I have no, I feel like she was married to somebody like that. But anyway, Kelly, was that her name? LeBlanc? I feel like I'm getting it wrong, but I'm close. Kelly something. Anyway. She was in that movie, Weird Science. I liked that movie, too. And, but there were all of these great Dionne Warwick songs in The Woman in Red. So you have to, like, download the songs off that album, because the Dionne Warwick album is actually not on there. It's like completely, they don't have it, so you have to find the songs. But there's this one song by Dionne Warwick, and it's like, moments aren't moments. It's called Moments Aren't Moments, and it's one of my favorite songs of life, and it's very dreamy, and you should listen to it. You should look it up and listen to it. It's like, moments aren't moments until they are moments, like this magic moment above, something like that. Oh my god, I also loved, what was the other movie that I loved growing up? I don't remember now. It was with Gene Wilder, and I loved Gene Wilder. And who was the woman that he was married to? Gilda Radner. And they were like, they were on, like, people thought that they were somebody that they weren't because of, like, I don't know, he was like at this like circus or something like that, and they thought he was somebody else, and so they were trying to get him and kill him, and she was like with him, and they were trying to get away from these people. And what was that movie called? I know this is hard to believe, but I have the VCR tape in my office. You're like, yes, Peter, we're sure you do. God, what was it called? I totally don't remember. Wiggle your toes. Wiggle your toes and you'll remember. It's a pink cover, and it's one word. And it's their faces on the cover. And they're both like, look at this. Oh, there was that other one that they did, too, together later, and it was called, like, it was like a parody on, like, Young Frankenstein. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? He was in Young Frankenstein, wasn't he? Wasn't Gene Wilder in Young Frankenstein? It was called The Hotel something, though. And Dom DeLuise was in it as well. Was that his name, Dom DeLuise? Anyway, I don't know. It's time for me to get off here and finish this audiobook so that I can go on to the next audiobook, because, you know, that makes me happy. So, anyway, I'm going to get off here now. I hope you guys are having an amazing, magical, amazing Monday. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Love ya! And since I did a quick outro, I'm going to say, one more I love you. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.